Good evening and welcome to Hello, It's Us. Hello, It's Us is dedicated to educating the general public about issues that are important to individuals with disabilities. And as we do educate the general public, we think that you will all recognize that those issues that are important to people with disabilities are important to everyone else in our community. Hello, It's Us is brought to you through a collaboration between the University of Iowa Center for Disabilities and Development, our good friends at Uptown Bill's, where we are filming this evening's show, and our friends at Public Access Television. My name is Mike Honick. I'm a co-host of Hello, It's Us, and I work as a program coordinator at the University of Iowa Center for Disabilities and Development. Keith?
Yes, my name is Keith Buck. I'm retired and I'm writing a book. And tonight's show is a real special tribute to a man who made it against the odds. His name is Bill Sackter. And Mike, would you like to start?
Sure. Well, first of all, we have a special guest, and most of you who are regular viewers of Hello, It's Us will recognize him, but he is Tom Gilsenan, the Uptown Bill's coffee shop manager, and does many other great things in the community here. Tom, welcome.
Thank you very much. Nice to have you here.
Welcome, Tom.
Yeah, we're very happy to be here, and this is our annual tribute. We've sort of made it a tradition of Hello, It's Us paying tribute to Bill Sackter. We're doing it a little bit later this year. His birthday was in April, and so by the time you view this, we will have surpassed that. But we'll certainly talk about some of the birthday activities that happened here at Uptown Bill's and around the community to commemorate this guy who we all believe is an extraordinary individual. So, Tom, what I thought we would do is to start out, I'm guessing that a lot of people of our viewers know the history of Bill, but I'm also guessing that a lot of them did not. I mean, for those of you that are new to the program, I'm a new co-host. I just started the first of the year, and I knew peripherally about Bill. Of course, I knew about the movie, and friends of mine had spoken about him, but I really didn't know much about the history of how he came to Iowa and really sort of set up shop here. So, Tom, could you kind of walk us through that a bit?
Love to. Bill Sackter spent his early childhood years in Minneapolis. His parents ran a little grocery store. They lived in a two-story house. They lived upstairs and the grocery store was downstairs. Bill started school, as people do, around age 5 or 6. And the school said that Bill had some kind of disability, and it was severe enough that the school said they weren't able to take care of him and recommended that he be sent to a state institution. This is in about 1920, so a long time ago. So Bill was sent to Faribault State Hospital, where there were hundreds of other young people and adults like him, and stayed there for almost 50 years. By the 1960s, many parents and many professionals thought this wasn't such a great idea after all, and it would be better for people to be able to stay in their own communities. So Bill went back to Minneapolis. His family, unfortunately, was long gone. His mother had moved away to Canada. His sister, he had an elderly sister who was still alive, but she lived in Florida. So Bill kind of fumbled around a little bit, and he met a young man, Barry Morrow, at a Christmas party at the country club where Barry's wife worked, and they became friends. And when Barry was offered a job here in Iowa City at the university, Bill ended up coming along. So when he arrived, of course, this is a lot smaller town, and this is more than 40 years ago, so it was difficult to find a job for Bill. Barry told me of some of the various things they tried to see if Bill could drive a truck, and Barry said, luckily we were in a cornfield, when Bill said, how do you stop this thing? They tried furniture refinishing and almost burned down North Hall.
Oh,
And then Barry thought, well, Bill really likes coffee, so why don't we try a coffee shop? And at first it was in a really small room, and Bill would roll out a little cart with a coffee maker on it and say the coffee shop's open. It was successful enough that it moved into what had been a classroom. Now, North Hall had been a K-12 school. If you were a student teacher at the University of Iowa, that's where you went for over 50 years. And the room where the coffee shop opened had been the kindergarten room in an earlier time. So it still has the reading circle, the little cubby holes where you put your blankie and your teddy, you know. And when the coffee shop opened, it flourished and became quite popular. And Barry thought, well, I should write a story about what happened to Bill, his journey from his childhood in Minneapolis. Oh, let me digress a little bit and say, Bill actually, his childhood was about a mile away from where Prince grew up. Now there's half a century difference, but it was the same part of North Minneapolis. So Bill grew up near Plymouth and Aldrich, and Prince grew up near Russell and Aldrich, about a mile away. So there's some link there.
That's an interesting connection.
At one time, I am from Minneapolis, and at one time we created a show about the neighborhoods of North Minneapolis, and we had one scene with Bill, and we had another scene with Prince in it. So there's this connection there. Prince held his first public concert in a theater that's roughly halfway between where Bill lived and where Prince lived, an old theater called the Capri. And that's where I was teaching high school, actually right next door to that theater, and people would come and ask us about the theater. So I could tell them about Prince and I could tell them about Bill at the same time.
When I first met Bill,
That's interesting.
I didn't mean to interrupt. It was my very first year in Iowa.
In Iowa City, yeah?
And he came to the dormitory to serenade us.
I see.
So I wanted to be there. And I found him a very fascinating man. I realized he did have a disability, but he had a very deep affection for people, especially kids.
Yeah, and that was, I never met him, although I had known Barry, and as I said, had worked in the neighborhood where Bill had lived as a little kid. But he was sort of this presence around. When the coffee shop caught on, and similarly to what you said, people just were attracted to him. At one time there was a daycare center in North Hall, and he would welcome the children in each morning. So Barry wrote this story, which appeared in the Des Moines Register about Bill's life, and the story evolved and became a screenplay for a movie called Bill. And Mickey Rooney played Bill, and Dennis Quaid played Barry. I have it's finally out on DVD just within the last year. Here's the case. And Bill then became this celebrity. People came to visit him from around the state and beyond, and he would get mail. We have a big folder of mail that he got from all over the country from people. So there was a second film called Bill on His Own, which focused more on the coffee shop, and that brought more attention. But Bill died shortly after the second film was finished. However, the coffee shop stayed, and one of the people who's still around, who I'd hoped we could get to come to talk with us today, Ed Gaines, was one of two people who helped hold the coffee shop together while the decisions were being made about, so what do we do now? Do we keep the coffee shop? Does it stay? Does it stay in the same place? All of those things. And the coffee shop stayed. It's still there. And where you are now, Uptown Bill's, is an outgrowth of that original coffee shop. We're like the community cousin of Wild Bill's.
it's quite a legacy when you think about it.
Yes.
that he was able, that he left this imprint and all that. And remind me again, what year did Wild Bill's, did the original coffee shop open?
1975.
75. So we're 40 years out.
Right.
And it's still thriving.
And still individuals with disabilities who are involved in working behind the counter and doing a lot of the running of the coffee shop, and backed up by student volunteers, primarily students in social work.
It's almost, Tom, it's almost like an icon among the students, because when I mentioned Bill's coffee shop, they go, oh yeah, not at all.
Quite remarkable for a man who as a child lived, was very poor, and in a neighborhood that was without much money, and to end up becoming this figure, this important figure in the field of abilities awareness.
And not only a figure, inspiration.
Yes.
An inspiration to other people with disabilities.
One of the things that really fascinates me when I think about Bill, I didn't have the pleasure of ever meeting him, but to think that he was in an institution for that many years and yet had that level of social awareness and approaching people and being approachable himself. I've certainly had some experience of knowing people who have been institutionalized so long that's just not, and if they do have the social skills, they don't always transfer very well to once they get out into the community. I'd be curious, Tom, if you have any thoughts on if that's just because of who Bill was. Did he have, it sounds like the morals were a big influence in his life, that he had the confidence to go out and reach out to people and be very much in the public eye.
There seemed to be something special about him in addition to the social skills, something that attracted other people to him. And he used his harmonica as a way to be present to people. People who knew him said he was quite embarrassed about his hair, his lack of hair. He had an incident that happened in the state hospital where somebody had, one of the staff had pulled on his hair and torn some of his scalp. And so he was really quite embarrassed about that. And he had a wig, but early on, but it was not really that great a wig. And when he got here to Iowa City, somewhere along the line, people heard about this, and a wig maker from Des Moines called and said, "Bring him over, and we'll give him, we'll fit him with a proper wig." And he did, and he became this marvelous-looking elderly man, And if you, I don't have a picture here, but for instance, when he's at the Golden Globe Awards accepting an award with Barry for the Bill movie, he looks like a really incredible guy.
Wow. Go ahead, Keith.
Go ahead.
No, I was curious, since you brought the film back into the discussion. Was a lot of it filmed right here in Iowa City?
No, as a matter of fact, none of it was. Neither film was. Excuse me. One of them was filmed near Yonkers, New York, and it was done there because Mickey Rooney was in a show on Broadway, a musical called Sugar Babies.
Oh yeah.
So he would be in the musical at night, and then they would film during the daytime. Some people say that one of the reasons it wasn't here is that there wasn't an infrastructure yet to do movies. There have been very few movies that had been done in Iowa at that point. Now, the one we usually think of in more recent times is Field of Dreams, which was all done here, but neither of the Bill movies were. The other one, a share of it was shot near Houston. And if you look at the shots of the beach, if you're familiar with flora and fauna, the movie says it's Southern California, but it's clearly not. The kind of palm trees and the other things there are more tropical than Southern California. But while getting ready to do the second film, somebody in the film production met Lyle Lovett, the singer, and this was before he had his really large band, and he was playing in clubs in Houston, and so he ended up with a part in the film. He's singing a song in the movie.
Interesting.
Tom, I wonder if any of your associates and also ever used that film in class to give people, students going into social work, a rough idea of what they're getting into.
More, because it had been out of print for so long, it was difficult to find.
Okay.
But more likely is a documentary that came out in 2008 or 2009 called A Friend Indeed, the Bill Sackter story. That's been used up lots in classes.
Okay.
And last year it was shown on Iowa Public Television a few times. In fact, the version that was on Iowa Public Television, it's a 60-minute film, and you can watch it on YouTube now. Again, it's called A Friend Indeed, the Bill Sackter story. But if you go to YouTube and search for Bill Sackter, it will come up.
And that was that developed here?
Yes.
That was a project at the university?
Yes, the university and Uptown Bills and then some community folks. Those things are expensive to do, and there was a fundraising campaign. And then the film, when the film premiered at Hampshire, that turned out to be the last event at Hampshire before the flood. So that would be 2008. Then it's available on DVD. It's a 90-minute version, the DVD version.
That'd be kind of a fun symbolic thing for them to kick off the New Hampshire with it again.
Yes, show it again. Of course, they might be worried that another flood would come.
I remember when I first saw the movie Bill, it was a special showing at the university library.
Oh, in that auditorium there,
Yes.
next to the library, yeah.
People was reading Bill. It's changed now.
That's interesting, Keith, because I have I never did actually see the full movie, but I remember when it came out. I wasn't, I was a teenager, I guess, and I just remember asking somebody what it was about, and and I think I got a description of something like it's about this mentally retarded man who did really well. and as I think about that, number one, I think about how our language has changed finally, so where we actually have people first language, and we have, we use terms that are hopefully a little, maybe not as complimentary. I'm not wild about the term intellectual disability, but it isn't quite as stigmatizing, I don't think, as retarded. And so I think about the progress we've made, but I also think about, in the day back then, that was the kind of terminology that was used, and the person who told me, it was a relative, told me what it was about. At least it created an awareness on the part of that person, because you think about back to the 70s, and we were moving away from institutionalization, but I don't think we were, looking back. Though we have a long way to go still, I don't think we had anywhere near the level of awareness about what people with all kinds of disabilities can do back then. So,
And just think, the big change since Bill's childhood to now, how our attitude has really made a 360 degree turn.
It turns out that if you look back now, the movie came at a time when people were thinking about these issues, and it sort of, Bill, without realizing it probably, became this symbol of what we call abilities awareness. All of a sudden, that he had hopes and interests and desires and wishes as much as any other person, and this helped change ideas. And Bill, in the last years of his life, after the film came out, was a popular speaker. What did we say? Lunches, dinners, and speeches. He would go and give talks, and he didn't really talk that much. He would say, "And thank you very much, God bless you all," and then play some songs on the harmonica. But he really captured the popular imagination. And it's probably only now that we realize how significant that those films were in influencing people's attitudes.
Yes.
Do you think how was he? How did he handle the celebrity status, if you will?
Well, the people I've met who knew him say that didn't change him at all. One of the other people I had hoped to have with us today is the fellow who drove the bus that he rode on.
Oh, yeah.
When he rode home. He lived on Ewell Street, so he would catch the bus and ride back and forth. But the bus driver, as several times have asked him, "No, not yet, maybe. Or if I come, it'll be a surprise." Well, he's clearly not here, so. But said that he remained the same Bill, and that he would play a tune or two on the bus, particularly on his way home.
Oh, that's good. That's good to hear. That doesn't probably always happen that way, for sure.
That's true. Yeah.
Tom, do you know if there was any planning for him when he got off the bus here to find North Pole at first, to get him used to a way to get there from the bus?
Oh, yes. In fact, in one of the movies, there's a cute little story that dramatizes that. Barry, when they moved into town, originally when they first came to town, they lived on a farmhouse out towards Kelowna. And then they moved into town, and Barry found this home where Bill could live on Ewell Street. And so then they started, talking about, well, now you could take the bus. So the first few times he would take the bus and, would get off at the wrong stop or not get off at all and ride it to the end of the line.
Oh.
Crazy things like that. And in the film, there's this scene where Barry is following the bus, and he's at the stop where Bill is supposed to get off, and Bill doesn't get off, so Barry gets out of the car, pounds on the bus door, saying, it's ready to get off. So they had a few things like that. Funny story, when the movie came out, and this scene in the movie, Bill was sitting next to a social work professor, and there's this scene, and Bill turns to the social work professor and said, "It's okay, that happens to me sometimes too." Not realizing that the character in the film was him. As best people could tell, he thought the movie was about Mickey Rooney.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But yet, that's how we find Bill's mind was, despite the disability. He really had a very keen mind.
Mm-hmm. Something that's coming along, Bill's house is going to be on a tour. We won't actually get to be in the house, but on the last Sunday in May in the afternoon, there's his kind of historic sites tour of the neighborhood there. What was that called? Lucas Farms, I think it was. And whatever the last Sunday in May, maybe the 28th, in the afternoon, Uptown Bills will have a little table outside with some pamphlets and things about Bill and about the house. So as I said, I don't think we're going to be inside the house. I think it's just going to be outside for that particular one. But the house is still there, and whoever has owned the house through the years has known it as that's where Bill lived. In fact, when I was at Wild Bill's, this has got to be 15 years ago, this woman ran in one day and she said, "I just bought Bill's house." And she and I've forgotten, it was a couple, who had bought the house, but she was so pleased she wanted to come into the coffee shop and tell us.
Neat. So
Yeah.
so that his name, I mean, it's recognized still.
Yes.
All over town.
Yes, but that's one of the issues that you wrestle with, is how do you keep that story going for the next generation, because Bill died in 1983, so there's one generation, maybe 20 years, and then another generation, and we're kind of at the end of that second generation, and we're getting to the point where there aren't a lot of people around who knew Bill, so have to figure out new ways to carry that story forward.
Well, and it seems like you're doing a fair amount of that, even just with having traditions, maintaining traditions, honoring him through the coffee shop, for instance. I know you had a number of things happening just earlier this month in honor of his birthday, right?
Yes, we did. We had an all-day party, as we've had for the last several years. We called it a different band and a different cake every hour. And actually, two of the musicians who played knew Bill, so it was quite a day to have them reminisce a little bit about seeing him on campus. So
that's
both
great.
of them had been students at the time, and but so we had this all-day party that we've had each year. Last year, if you came, we had Bill's hat, and you could have your picture taken with his hat on. And the year before, we invited people to make coffee cups for Bill's birthday, and then we auctioned them off. And some people gave them back to us, so if you come for coffee, you might get one of those Bill cups. I think we still have.
Oh, how fun!
I think we still have two. We've broken a couple, of course, but I think we still have two of those.
Oh, that's tremendous.
So, and we're at the point where Uptown Bills will celebrate its 15th birthday in July. Not quite sure what we'll do yet, but we have gotten some pictures out from the opening day of Uptown Bills in 2001, and they're here in the coffee shop, like a little art display. It'll be up for one more week until the next art show comes.
Well, that's really great. I mean, that's really a neat thing to be able to celebrate. An anniversary that's going on that long. We're coming up to the end of what will be part one. Actually, we didn't mention that at the beginning, I guess, of a two-part series on Bill. And I think, as we kind of wind down this first portion, I'd like to go back just a little bit to kind of wrapping up and thinking about the messages that Bill shared. You know, when you think about it, we have some really, some of you hopefully had a chance to watch the Money Follows a Person program that has gone on, and as a part of Hello, It's Us, and at that point you saw people that have been able through a program be able to get out and live on their own and enjoy life. There weren't programs like that when Bill was doing his thing and having all the success back in the 1970s. And I think one of the reasons that I get excited about paying tribute to him is thinking about what a pioneer he really was to really kind of send the message that people with disabilities do belong in the community.
It's almost like an ongoing legacy that will never stop.
I think the word you used, Keith, was inspiration.
Yes.
And he really was able to pass along that message to many people through his life, and now he's continued to do that through his many the many legacies, as you said, Keith, that he leaves.
Yes.
Well, I hope all of you, I want to thank you all for joining us, and we hope that all of you will stay tuned for part two of the Bill Sackter Tribute, in which we'll talk a little bit more about the programming that's available through Uptown Bills and Wild Bills, and how you might be able to get involved and really take advantage of the many, many exciting things that are going on here. So, Keith, any final thoughts on?
Now I just hope that whoever is out there got the message that people with disabilities can participate in the community if given a chance. Thank you and good night.